You promised earlier to talk a little bit about the relationship between the psychological component of the recovery from a brain injury
Right.
and the brain injury itself.
Right.
Seems like we're at that natural point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's because before I was a neuropsychologist, I was a clinical psychologist. So I'm very interested in personality. Some of my early research was on the brain underpinnings of personality. So even pre-accident, pre-morbidly, someone's personality is important to understand. And that's why I argue against some of these really quick computerized batteries that don't take this into account. So if someone before an accident is a little bit on the obsessive compulsive side, so let's say you're a successful attorney, you're probably more on the compulsive side, right? You like your T's crossed and your I's dotted, you like things organized, you like to be in control of things. If I give you a head
And you've been talking to my wife.
if I give you a head injury, you're gonna be anxious because your personality style is being messed with. You are not in control of things. Like if you forget 3 things at the grocery store, that's gonna grate on your nerves because you're used to being exacting and carrying out those spousal commands, with
Right.
great accuracy, right? On the other hand, the same amount of head injury in someone who's, let's say, a histrionic personality, different personality type, pre-morbidly, right?
What's histrionic?
Histrionic is someone who's like really gregarious, like the life of the party, someone you like to go out and have a beer with, they're going to be lively, maybe garrulous, they like the attention, that kind of thing. That same level, like that, if they had that same level of brain injury, it wouldn't impair them. It wouldn't impact on them as much. What would impact on them as much is maybe if they had that word retrieval problem, so they couldn't speak or they couldn't tell a joke or, that they messed up the punchline, that kind of thing. So that might have a greater effect on their self-esteem. So understanding who it was that had the brain injury, who they were beforehand, and this is where interviewing with family members and getting a sense of knowing their occupation and what they did and that kind of thing is very important. And some of the personality tests that we give measure pre-morbid personality, not symptoms that you have afterwards, right? The other things in terms of pre-morbid, while I'm at it, if someone's had a previous head injury, they're more likely to have protracted symptoms. Now, if someone had a previous mild head injury 20 years ago, that's not so much the case. But as we know with football players and the NFL concussion protocol, if you've had a head injury within a week or 2 beforehand, you might be withheld from playing because we know from evaluating before we realized what was happening, these players that would go in after sustaining a concussion and sometimes even finish out the same game and then get concussed again, that's when you have major problems with dementia later on. So pre-morbidly, we want to know about personality, occupation, where they were in their life, their social functioning, that kind of thing, as well as health. So pre-morbid depression, totally unrelated to personality type, but pre-morbid depression is a bad prognostic indicator for recovery from a head injury. And then after the head injury, it's really important to understand the role of depression and anxiety because that messes with recovery. And so often that's not covered. That's just, it's not talked about or it's not dealt with. The family has to deal with it. That's why family counseling is really important. And these rehab programs that we talked about they have support groups for family members so that they can understand what's happening.